Hello, my name is Sandra Schreier, and this is my book, The Golden Rule. I hope you enjoy it, and may God bless you.
The Golden Rule, written by Sandra Schreier and illustrated by Awan Dharmawan.
"Where are you going, Isaac?" asked Alex. "I'm taking Natalie down to the barn to see the new baby lamb that Grandpa bought at the fair. We're making sure that lamb isn't giving Mr. Donkey any problems," replied Isaac. "I think the real problem is what that mischievous old donkey is doing to his new roommate," yelled Alex as he opened the front door of Grandma and Grandpa's house. "Look who's here, Grandpa. It's Marissa and Alex," said Grandma. "Where is your brother and sister?" she asked as she opened the cookie jar for them. Isaac and Natalie were so excited to see the baby lamb, they ran straight to the barn. "They'll be up shortly," replied Alex. "Grandma, why is Grandpa lying on the couch in the middle of the afternoon?" asked Marissa as she took a cookie from the jar. "Grandpa thinks he's young again. Yesterday he was showing Lydia and Mir how he could jump rope with them. As you can see, it wasn't one of his better ideas. Doctor told him he needed to stay off his ankle for a day or two." "Which is why I'm so glad you're here," said Grandpa. "I need help with feeding the animals out in the barn." "We can do that, can't we, Marissa?" Alex asked. "I guess we can," she said sadly, as she took another cookie from the jar and proceeded towards the door. While Alex opened it up for her, he saw her eyes were teary. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Can I help you?" Trying not to cry as she started down the hill, Marissa said, "There's a boy named Mark in my class, and he made fun of me at school this week." "What happened?" Alex asked. "Mark's dog had puppies a few weeks ago, and he asked the kids in class if they would like to have one. When I put my hand up, he said, 'No way I'm going to give a Bucky Beaver like you any of my puppies.' Everyone laughed at my big buck teeth, and I couldn't stop crying. I'll never forgive him for that," cried Marissa. "I think you're beautiful." "Thanks, Alex, but I'm never going to forgive Mark." "But you must, Marissa, because God won't forgive you if you don't. Just yesterday, Papa told me that I needed to forgive Isaac, even after he destroyed my science project." "Wasn't that hard?" she asked, wiping the tears from her eyes as they continued walking towards the barn. "Yes, but that's the way God would want it. You know what? Isaac told me about an old donkey in Grandpa's barn that talks to kids. Maybe he can help. But first you have to promise never to tell Grandpa about the talking donkey. Isaac had me promise him because he thinks Grandpa might try to sell him to the circus when it comes to town." "I promise, but are you sure he can talk? I never heard of a talking donkey." "He can. Isaac wouldn't lie," said Alex as he opened the barn door. Inside they saw him, Mr. Donkey. He was standing next to Natalie and Isaac, and they were all admiring the new baby lamb. "Welcome, my little ones," said the old donkey, as he moved out of the way for Marissa and Alex to get a closer look at the baby lamb. Alex and Marissa stared. "He can talk!" they shouted. "I told you Mr. Donkey can talk," replied Isaac. He turned to Marissa. "Please don't tell Grandpa about Mr. Donkey." "I promise not to tell," she said, smiling at Natalie with the baby lamb in her arm. "Isn't she beautiful?" asked Natalie. "Yes, she is," replied Marissa. "Were you crying, Marissa?" Isaac never liked to see a girl cry. He didn't mind making Alex cry, but never a girl. She sniffled and looked down at the floor, not wanting to answer. Alex turned to the old donkey and asked, "Can you tell Marissa what Jesus had to say about forgiving others?" "I'd love to," replied Mr. Donkey. "First we need to feed the animals. Grandpa asked us to help," said Alex. When they finished taking care of the animals, they sat down on the hay, waiting for another story that only Mr. Donkey could teach. Mr. Donkey began the story. Jesus was with his disciples one day when Peter asked him, "How many times must I forgive someone who's done me wrong?" Peter thought he knew the answer. 7 times, he said. But Jesus said, I tell you, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. That's a lot of forgiveness, cried Marissa. Mr. Donkey nodded. It sure is. Then he continued. Jesus told a story about a king forgiving a servant who owed him a debt, a large amount of money. That servant went out and found a friend of his who owed him only a small amount of money. Pay me back the money you owe me, he told his friend, but the friend couldn't pay it. So guess what that man did, the one who the king forgave? Marissa's eyes were large. What did he do? She asked. Mr. Donkey stepped towards Marissa. Instead of forgiving the debt of his friend, he had him thrown into jail. When the king heard what had happened, he called the first man back. You wicked man, he said, I forgave all that debt you owed because you begged me. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your friend just as I had on you? In anger, the king turned him over to the jailer. You see, kids, we've been forgiven for all our mistakes by asking Jesus to forgive us. We must forgive others when they have wronged us, not just 7 times, but 70 times 7, like Jesus told Peter to do, said Mr. Donkey. Remember that God always forgives us when we ask Him. There's no end to His forgiveness, explained Mr. Donkey. I see. With God's help, I'll learn to forgive others, said Marissa. You got it, replied Mr. Donkey. Right there in Grandpa's barn, Marissa bowed her head and prayed, Father, forgive me for the things I do wrong, so with your help I can learn to forgive others. Please, Father, teach me to love so I can even love Mark. Amen. That's the way to do it, Marissa, said Alex. Thanks, I feel great, shouted Marissa. By the way, Marissa, what did Mark do to upset you? Asked Mr. Donkey. He embarrassed me in front of all the kids in my class. He said he'd never give a puppy to a Bucky Beaver. Oh, is that it? You know I hear that name Bucky Beaver mentioned a lot around here, the old donkey said as he smiled real big. The kids chuckled after seeing Mr. Donkey's big buck teeth. Thank you, Mr. Donkey, shouted the kids as they left the barn. You're welcome, replied Mr. Donkey as he turned to go back into his stall for the night. And then the old donkey said his prayer. Please help us all to learn to forgive and truly love others. Remind us to not say hateful words. Jesus, place in our heart the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Amen. Good night, Lord. The old donkey closed his eyes for another day. The end. Thank you, Marissa, for helping me to bring the true meaning of forgiveness and love for others. And Alex, for the way you care for others by putting them first is truly a gift from God. Thank you. This book is for all the children that have been confronted by bullies and still choose to show love and forgiveness. Thank you.